58% of organizations claim to have embedded AI into their work practices, allowing for new opportunities for productivity growth, for cost savings, and for executives to tout that we are ahead, we're there with AI. Well, at the same time, employees, 50% or more, are living in utter terror of their jobs. This is not a good thing. There are alternatives. And the companies that I believe will really survive and sustain long term are those that recognize that the future is here, it is moving at the speed of light, and AI is important, but so are people. People empowered to leverage AI to improve their work lives, to achieve more, and to advance the company towards its purpose, potentially with completely new work practices. That is the future. An example from one of my clients, a company called Vanamida, which is a claims processing organization based in Central Europe. Back about 3 years ago, they had a major problem, and that was how to keep young people, 20-somethings, that were employed within their claims processing department, how to keep them engaged and how to keep them within the company, in fact. Because these folks were being asked to take in claims that came from somebody having car insurance, having an accident, 15 minutes per claim to review the claim, double check to make sure the payment had been made, double check to determine the amount that could be allocated for a payment to that person. 15 to 20 minutes per claim, 8 to 9 hours sitting behind a screen. No wonder they had 40% turnover rate. And the smart manager of that team recognized, even then, there's something called AI out there. Why don't we look for a tool that can intake these claims, can review the basic information, can check to make sure the payment is made, and then to make recommendations for the letter and the message and that would go out to that person. Brilliant. By implementing the tool in a structured way, they were able to go from 15 minutes per claim to 40 seconds to a minute per claim. So the answer for these 150 people that had been spending all of this time processing claims, the answer was, how can we really deploy these people in a way that they can deliver more value to our company? They only needed 20 claims supervisors to review the results from the AI. The other 130 were repurposed, if you will. So during that period, while they were testing the AI tools, the managers and the supervisors met with each of the 130 people to determine what each person really wanted to do, their motivated skills, where they could bring the greatest value. And so over the course of 6 to 9 months, as the tool was implemented, those 130 people were moved into new roles, many into newly defined account management roles, where they could actually go out and meet with the large corporate clients, the insurers, and build deeper relationships. Some moved into finance and analysis, data collection information. The types of roles that the people moved into were what they actually wanted to do, way more than ever sitting behind a screen for 8 hours processing claims. The result over 1 to 2 years was increased revenue from truly better, true customer service, while decreasing the turnover rate. Their turnover went from 40% to as low as 10% because people were free to do what humans do best. That's an example of a company that I would bet on that is using AI to free people to do the human skills. That is true future readiness, leading with people and AI. As I work with organizations, I always say you start with the purpose, the business problem. AI is simply a tool. It's not the answer for everything. Determine what you're trying to achieve. In Vanamida's case, they were trying to reduce the time and the people that it took to do detailed claims processing. Explore what are the different tools and the different options, and how might each one impact people. And try things on a small scale. You don't go all in with one tool immediately. Start with a very clear pilot that is a 2 to 3 week utilization of the tool fully within a small sample of data or people, and measure the results. Is it achieving what you anticipated? Is it actually getting you to your purpose more quickly? And encourage people to collaborate. There is no one person that knows everything about how to most effectively leverage AI. This is a journey. It's an ongoing journey. So talk to others. And when you are confident that this particular tool solves this problem in this environment, then it's time to empower people to use the tool with very clear guardrails. What kinds of data should you upload to it? What are the requirements to really discern and determine whether these results that are coming from it are the best results that we may bring back to our team? So, AI, just like all change, is a process that you can move into with peace, starting with the purpose, exploring, acting, collaborating, and ultimately empowering others to move forward. So, as we go into this future, it's all about starting with the purpose, involving people. This is not doing AI to people, it's implementing AI with people in order to help people have a better life. And it's steps by acting, collaborating, and empowering. So, on this journey into the future, it's wonderful that we will have Melissa Daimler, who is a people leader, if you will. She has been in chief people officer, chief learning officer roles from Adobe to Udemy to Twitter to WeWork. She has seen a lot and will help us in determining how we can best, as people, reculture organizations to lead with people and AI. And then we'll have some open discussion, and then we'll hear from Melissa. Thank you.
I put it in the comments, but I'll just say it out loud too. Then when we talk about this big shift, and not necessarily just to always just move people to other roles where they're still working 8 or 9 hours a day, but this is the big opportunity that we have to shorten the work week. It's that 100-80-100 perspective, right? 100% of the pay, 80% of the time, 100% of the productivity that AI also allows. Because I think that we can't expect people to be taking on and learning these new tools and or thinking about or learning a new role and dealing with all of the breakdowns and complexity that exist in our world right now with the same kind of work. So you started your conversation by saying, how do we get Gen Zs or alphas to want to sit at a desk for 8 or 9 hours? And the answer is we won't.
No. Completely agree. And ultimately, I believe that over the next year or 2 years, all of us, need to completely rethink just the whole concept of work. What is work, and how can we as people be people and leverage tools to do other things that integrate our work and our lives?
100%.
Melissa will touch on a bit of that as well.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, Melissa, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with all of you. I think this is such a wonderful opportunity. I was telling Jennifer before, you guys have been doing this now for a couple of years, Jen, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
3 years, actually.
Because as we all are experiencing, this is coming so fast. And if anybody says they have the answer, we know that they're probably lying because just when we feel like we're getting a hold of what this technology is, it changes again. So I love that you all are meeting and having a dialogue because I don't think anybody is an expert right now and we're all trying to figure this out together. So in that spirit and in that context, I'll share, as is the format here, a few thoughts, and then we're going to leave some time to hear from you, and I'll look at the chat. I'm already loving the comments in the chat. And as Jen said, I've been in Silicon Valley for a long time, over 20, I think it's 25 plus years now, and have seen a lot of change. And I am loving that AI can bring us. But as we already have said here, I think there's ways that people are not leveraging the technology in the most effective way. So I want to start out with just two stats. I know we were all getting inundated with a lot of research and a lot of statistics and a lot of numbers. This is the most recent research that I came across from Accenture. And I thought it was really interesting, and it was a really great way to set what I want to talk about today. And the fact that 86% of C-suite leaders are wanting to continue to invest in AI this year, but only 20% of employees feel like active co-creators. And that's what I'm seeing as a trend as I'm working with quite a few companies now, where there's this massive disconnect between kind of what leaders are saying they want to do and even how they're experimenting with AI, and bringing their employees along with why we're even doing this and what they should do. So we can go to the next slide, Jen. So the three kind of discussions that I want to tee up today are, one, my favorite topic, and I know it's Jennifer's. We've had a lot of conversations over the years, that no surprise, this is not a tech shift primarily. This is really a leadership and cultural challenge that we're dealing with. The second is all about the skills that make you effective. I loved, Nancy, what you shared here. I think one of the challenges that I'm seeing is if we allow employees extra time after they augment and automate with AI, do we then let them just have a 4-day week? Or how do we make sure that, Jen, to your example, we're upskilling them on the skills around being with customers, or around being strategic, around all of those things that they haven't done as much when they were doing their old job? And then the third dialogue is this experimentation idea and having it be more about intentional design. I think in 2025, it was really, I heard a lot of people saying, just do more AI in this kind of frenzy, versus I think this year, starting with what Jen said in the beginning, what problem are we trying to solve? How do we more intentionally look at our entire organization and the workflows that we want to help be more effective? So those are the three discussions. Now you can move to the next slide, Jen. So I wanted to just share this. You've seen a version of this, but I think it's just grounding to look at all of the changes. Many of us have been through a lot of these changes. And I think each of these changes had what I would call one layer of change. We had the internet allowed us to have access in ways that we never did before. Social media allowed us to be able to communicate differently, and smartphones we were able to work from anywhere. So again, not our first change with AI, but I think what's different with AI is you have multiple layers of change happening. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Jennifer, it's all about really the pace and scale is like no other change I think that we've experienced. Because again, it's not a technology change. It really is technology and leadership, and it affects every single workflow in our organization. And I was telling Jennifer earlier that it's probably no fewer than 3 leaders a week where we're having a conversation about the overwhelm and the fear. And I was at an AI conference last week, as Jennifer said, and in between the presentations in the hallways, talking to leaders about, can I just talk to you about how I'm supposed to keep up? Who are you listening to now? What classes are you taking? And so they're trying to upskill themselves as leaders. They're trying to help their teams, and then they're trying to help their organization make these major changes. So I just think it can be very overwhelming at times. And again, I think that's why these forums are that much more important. Yes. Yeah, you guys have a lot of good insights here. AI tools are growing massively with their capabilities, but they're not 100% reliable. I will speak to that. So if we can go to the next slide, one of the things that I've been passionate about, and Jen, if you want to go to the next one, around leadership and culture, is this idea that culture is really a system. We lead cultures and organizations, but we lead essentially organizational systems. And that has been my passion throughout my career. And in 2022, I published a book with all of my learnings, as Jen said, the good, bad, and the ugly, of what I learned as a practitioner inside organizations about culture, because I so wanted a playbook when I was inside. And I just felt like so many companies and research articles and books were talking about culture as more of this kind of theoretical approach, or worse, it was the happy hour, or it was the games. And so I thought there was a real opportunity to codify what I learned. And it's a very simple framework that you see here. It's just 3 components, but it's really based on culture as something we do versus something that we have. And it goes much more beyond the values of an organization, which is what I had experienced initially, where organizations stop. So beyond values, if you look at organizations you've been in, or even organizations that you're running, and you look at what a great performer is doing, what are they doing? What are some of those behaviors? What are they not doing that might be as an important question? And so I've done this in all of the companies that I've worked in. And a quick example, at Udemy, we, of course, were an ed tech company. It was all about learning. Learning was a value, but learning is a value at a lot of different companies. And so behaviorally, one of the behaviors we looked at was to really learn, we need to constructively debate each other. We really need to make sure that we're understanding all of our different points of view. And so we codified that as behavior, and then we integrated that into all of our core processes, how we hired, how we promoted, how we performance managed and gave feedback, how you constructively engaged with people was on a frequency scale. And we were able to measure that and give feedback and reward for that. And then when I talk about practices, team practices are really about those day-to-day kind of things that we're doing: meetings, collaboration, making decisions. So ideally, a lot of the behaviors that we've codified also are embedded in some of those practices. So if we then bring in this layer of how is culture connected to what we're seeing with AI today, all of the companies that I know have healthy cultures and systems who have already intentionally worked on codifying and being super clear about what good looks like, they're also the ones who are being successful with AI, because they're doing things like, if I go back to learning and constructive debate, when AI first came out, we were trying to figure out what to do at Udemy, because that was so much part of our culture to really have dialogues and constructively debate. We made time for people to learn AI, and not just to learn AI by themselves, but to come back together and have healthy conversations as a team. What are you learning? What did you try? Where did you fail? What worked? What didn't work? And then we also, I think, did a good job of change leadership, really answering the why we're even upskilling in this area, how this is going to impact you as an employee. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, no worries.
And then the skills piece, I think, is also an interesting component here. I think the skills that make you effective with AI are essentially leadership skills. And there's a lot out there that I'm sure you have all used yourselves, have experienced, have read about. I want to highlight just 3 of those today. And if we go to the next slide, Jen. So clarify, discern, and experiment. We've heard a lot about AI slop and junk in, junk out, which I think we've all experienced. And so when I think about clarity and clarify as a skill, it's that input that we give into our AI. So are we not just giving it good prompts, but are we giving it good examples? Are we giving it the overall objective that we want to this project? And I'll give you a couple of examples. Jennifer mentioned Anthropic. I am a huge fan of Anthropic. I've been writing a lot about it. I love Claude. If you haven't used Claude Code, I highly recommend it. If I can build an app, you all can build an app. You guys probably have done that too. But I finally got to meet the head of people at Anthropic last week, and she was really impressive in that she really runs no surprise if we think about it, but she really runs the HR team as a product team. And she was giving this example of how she was really not being clear with her team for about 6 months on a project that she was trying to get them to work on. And she was talking about this dashboard that she wanted and all of these different components and features, and they weren't delivering it. She wasn't clear. And so one of the themes of the conference was, don't just talk about AI, build with it, start building. And so she said, I finally just over the weekend decided to build tech in Claude Code. And I brought it back to my team and I showed my entire team, and they said, oh my gosh, now we get what you want. Now we understand what you really want. And she said they took it, ran with it, and built a beautiful kind of dashboard of what, I mean, so much better than what her prototype was. But it was such a great example of the skill of clarifying. And if we're not clear about what it is we want, then, we obviously will get something else. But this idea of being able to build ourselves as leaders, even if it's not that great, and really show our team what we want, I think is a huge opportunity. And then if we go to the next skill, discern, that to me, if clarity is input, discern is really the output. And so we've heard a lot of cases around hallucinations, and I've personally had so many situations working with the different LLMs where it comes out with content, it's based on a strategy from 2 years ago, or it made up facts, it made up statistics or numbers. And so really being able to and have this human in the loop, I think is really important. I talk to so many leaders every week who are so frustrated with their employees because they know that the products, the documents that they're getting was clearly made with AI, and they don't have a problem with that. The company already said, we want you to use this, but they didn't check their data. There was some mistakes, or the information didn't make sense. So this idea of making sure you're clear with your team that it's okay to use these tools, and I expect that you have discernment and judgment in making sure that these are the right results, these are the right outcomes that you wanted to have. And then the third piece is just all around experimentation, which we've been talking a lot about. But I think this is more about actively learning and applying and sharing what you're learning. And so the whole kind of prototype that Hannah did with her team, walking the talk and using the tools herself and sharing with their team that I'm going to experiment, is just a great way to role model. So many companies, and there's a lot of research on this too, where leaders are saying, go experiment, but they're not experimenting themselves. They're not sharing what they're learning or what they're tripping up over. So I think it's really important to model that along the way as well. The other thing I wanted to highlight here, I said there were 2 examples. In going back to the clarity skill, we talked about this last as well, Klarna, it's a financial company that you guys have probably heard this use case. It's been shared quite a bit, but the CEO was there and he was sharing that when AI first came out, it was such an opportunity to do what you were talking about, Jennifer, like taking a lot of their customer reps, their customer service reps, and using AI to solve customer problems. And what ended up happening is they lost quite a bit of customers, but it wasn't because they didn't solve the problem. It was because customers wanted that kind of that interaction with employees. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to be understood. And the goal, if we're going to clarify the outcome, wasn't just to solve the customer complaint. It's to make sure that you not only solve the customer complaint, but you keep that customer over time. You want to retain your customers. And so again, they ended up realizing, wow, like such a great case of you can use AI to solve problems, but it may not be the right problem to solve if you're not clear. And the company ended up putting back some of those, not all, but most of the customer reps to solve those kind of higher escalation issues. So I just think that is such a great example of getting clear on what the outcome is that you want and figuring out where it makes sense to use technology versus where it makes sense to bring in humans. Okay, we can go to the next slide. The last conversation is just really about, again, experimentation to intentional design. And again, I really have seen this shift from last year to this year, where it's not just about how many pilots can we do, it's how do we step back and look at all of our different workflows, from hiring to shared services to, I'm giving you HR processes, but it's really all across the company. And how do we, instead of thinking about AI as just bolting it on to an existing process, how might we think completely differently in how we approach those processes? I'm working with a company now just around organizational design and organizational structures, because they're realizing this is not new. We've been realizing that the hierarchical model doesn't work necessarily for all teams, but how do we create and leverage opportunities with AI as we work on projects in networked pods across the organization? And so again, taking a whole step back and reconfiguring what that look like. We can go to the next slide. So a lot of research, and again, you probably have read some of this too. There's a lot more coming out, but McKinsey highlights this in the quote here. The real unlock with productivity is taking a step back and rethinking the entire workflow and how we leverage the human and the agent and I guess robots as well in this case. So I think that's going to be where a lot of the work is this year. And I think it's pretty exciting to be thinking about it again as a whole system rather than just how do we bolt on this technology.
Which is the real opportunity, as Nancy also shared. It's the rethinking completely.
Yeah, for sure. And then I would love to stay in touch. I've met a lot of people on LinkedIn and through dialogues like this. So this is my QR code for LinkedIn. This is my website. I also wanted to mention my partner and I are putting together, one of the things that we're seeing is this real gap between, and I'd be curious to hear your feedback on this, but between kind of what I would call AI 101 and 401, like there, a lot of companies now have rolled out the AI fluency training. So everybody understands the basics of prompt engineering. And then you have your IT team, who's the 401. They understand obviously how to code and how to take some of these issues and figure out how to rethink at scale across an organization. But then you have this whole kind of middle section of people who are doing exactly what we're talking about here. They're like trying to figure out, how do I leverage the tools and kind of rethink the workflows differently than how I've done it before? And so one of the things that I see is missing is these trainings are done with kind of individual contributors, but they're not done with embedded teams who are working together. So they go off, they learn AI, and then they come back together and they're like, how do we don't know how to now apply this. So we're putting together a 3-hour workshop with teams and helping them distill what it is they want to change and how do we rethink together what that new process could be. And so at the end of the 3 hours, you'll have kind of a prototype of what that is. We're offering it for free right now because we just want to test it out with a few teams. So if you're interested, would love to talk to you. That's just my little plug for a free opportunity. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Love that.
So we'll
That's
let
great.
you all connect as well. And I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can see everybody a lot better and open up the floor. Carver, as I would expect, has his hand up first. Jump on in, Carver.
There's some chats too that are going
Excellent.
about Accenture. Go ahead.
Lots of good chats. Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jennifer, for putting on another great session. And Melissa, really enjoyed your insights and the discussion about too often organizations look at AI as a technology problem, right? And it really is a people and process component way before you ever get to technology. And Jennifer, like your peace model, when I work with clients to build an AI strategy and governance plan, it starts with the business goals like you're talking about. Then you have to talk about the restrictions. What are my legal, ethical, cultural compliance restrictions? Out of all of that, what is my policy? And then you go through all of these readiness stages. And besides data readiness, which a lot of people think about first, it's the people readiness and the process readiness piece. And we don't get to actually testing any actual tools until like step 7 out of 10, right? I think people just skip those first 6 steps. And I think that's why so many projects have failed, is they've just launched straight into the experimentation phase, which is great for teaching yourself what's possible, but it's not the formula for a successful project. And the last quick thing I'll share, I've read a really interesting story this week of what happens when you don't think through the people and process stuff well enough. There was a company that had implemented AI agents in a customer service environment. And the good news is the AI agents were taking a large percentage of those interactions off the plate of the humans. The bad news, though, is that then meant that the humans were only getting the angriest customers and the hardest problems to solve all day long. They didn't have any mental or emotional break of, oh, this is an easy one. Now they're only dealing with the escalations, and they were burning out their agents at an even faster rate. So very interesting unintended consequence of trying to take things off their plate. So that's why the cultural piece you talked about, Melissa, and just the whole people process component is way more important in some cases than the tool that you choose to use.
I love that. It's so interesting because I didn't mention this, but I think this goes back to a lot of the change leadership playbooks that we've all leveraged. The psychological safety and just answering basic questions it's not being done. Like, even, why are we doing this? How is it going to affect me? There's another research report that apparently a lot more employees are using AI, but outside of their work, because they're afraid that if they get tracked on what it is they're using AI for within the enterprise license model they have, that their job is either going to go away, they're going to get punished for how they're using it, they're going to get questioned. And so I just think we're not doing a good job. And that goes back to the first slide I shared, being co-creators in this. The thing that I'm seeing is, some of you may have heard that Block just had a huge layoff, 40% of their workforce. And we're calling it AI washing, because Jack, who I worked with at Twitter, CEO there, said, hey, because of AI, we had to make the layoffs. And in reality, that business was not doing well for a while. And while I think it's good, it looks good for CEOs to say and blame AI for efficiency reasons, and great that you're using all the tools, but that's not the real reason that you had to lay off 40% of the company. And so what that does is that continues to instill fear in the companies remaining, or the employees remaining there, and then just fear with other organizations. Employees look at that, and again, what's the point of me using AI? What's in it for me? If ultimately what's going to happen is the CEO is just going to lay a big portion of our employees off. I think there's low-hanging fruit here and just bringing people on. The example I always give is Walmart. Doug has since retired, but Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, compared to Andrew Jassy at Amazon, similar business models, looking at how to leverage AI, but very different approaches in how they're talking to employees. Walmart saying, we're going to do everything we can to upskill you and to make sure that you continue to have a job. We never can guarantee that anybody can have a job. That's never been the case, even before AI. But Amazon continuing to do these rolling layoffs and not really bringing employees along and saying that efficiency is more important than upskilling employees. So I just think it's interesting to see the different models out there, especially in similar businesses.
And it's interesting just scanning through the chat, the dialogue about, I believe it was Accenture that was noted as incentivizing people to use AI. In my mind, that's just absolute insanity. It's incentivize people to accomplish something with humans and AI. That's a good thing. It's got to be both. Karthik, wonderful to have you here and love your viewpoint.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to stay off video because I'm nursing a couple of health issues, but glad to be here. Glad to have the opportunity to listen in. One of the questions I had for this, probably the entire group, is are people generally having multiple AI tools? Like I started using Claude a few months ago, but I also use Gemini. And I'm asking the question because it seems to make sense that you want to keep your professional profile separate from your personal profile. Because I use Gemini for a lot of my personal lifestyle type questions, even parenting my 16-year-old, I get advice from Gemini. I upload my MRI results to see what the hell is going on. Is my doctor on track or not? I don't want to get that mixed up with competitive intelligence and strategy questions for my professional line. Do people generally have multiple profiles? The other challenge that I have is the more you converge all of your interactions, I feel like the results coming back will get better over time. Am I losing out by keeping these two things separate? That's a constant question that keeps rolling around in my head. I don't know if people have a point of view on that.
I have thoughts, but I'd love to hear from others.
Yeah. Christian, did you have an answer for Karthik or a different question?
No, I have an answer. Thank you for giving me the word.
Yes.
And just to answer, Karthik, what I'm doing here actually is I'm using an answer in two ways. The first way is that I'm using different LLMs. I'm using Gemini Pro, using ChatGPT Plus, Perplexity Pro, and the Claude. And what I'm doing is sometimes it is you start in one, you hand over to the second, to the third, or only two to receive better results. Because if you use only ChatGPT, or which many people do only Gemini, you will not get the full-fledged. They're good at different things.
Yeah.
That's the point. And also when you build agents, it's really important as well. So that's the first answer. The second one is about the data. Like everyone talks about data. Where's the data going? I'm residing in Sweden, in Europe, in Stockholm. And in Europe here, we don't want the data to go to other territories like North America. You have nothing against North America. We love you. But the point is, from a EU AI Act point of view, we need to be very careful about it, where the data goes. But to answer your personal question, Karthik, is I'm thinking like this. What is the kind of data I'm giving to the AI? And not when I don't know, we can never be certain where it goes anyways. We need to have zero trust, basically. But I think it is important to understand that if you have an environment, I run our business. So, for instance, I know that Google Workspace, Gemini Pro, the data stays within my domain. So then I'm fine. But if you think about doing a 16-year-old questions, then again, you need to think, where's the data going? And never put out any personal data or any bank account or data like this. Just neutralize it. Is that an answer to your question?
Yeah, no, great takeaway for me. Taking output from one LLM and refining it with another. 100% I've noticed that they all have their strengths and weaknesses. So that's great to know. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I would plus one that. I do think Gemini I use a lot for research. I love Notebook LM. I think Claude is, I always say, I think you need a daily driver. Like my daily driver right now is Claude. I'm not using ChatGPT a lot, if at all, right now for a variety of reasons. But I think that also does really good analysis. I do think using them for different purposes is good. I think your other question, Karthik, is interesting because I've talked to employees and organizations where they feel like they're not being able to leverage all of the tools and ways that they can do that personally. So usually a company has just one kind of enterprise license. They're just not able to experiment and expand as much. They're doing that on a personal level. And some of them, I think some companies are even reimbursing employees for licenses to experiment at home. The other thing, you guys all know this, but there is a button, make sure you say that you want your information used for training purposes. It's hidden, but I think people forget that. But those are some thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have another idea. Is two more quick things here.
Okay, quickly, and then we've got a couple more people with you.
Yeah, I know. I tried the Swedish unicorn Lovable app. I paste in a link here. I have a little app here that I'm pasting. I hope the link works. If not, tell me. Here we go. This is for boards and C-levels.
Okay,
that is the AI transformation snapshot in 3 dimensions. But have a look at yourself. And the last one is use Comet, use the browser Comet. And if you have a Perplexity Pro license, it is very powerful. It has built-in agents, like you book a table to restaurant for the next day, etc. And with an extension which is called Extra AI, you can have different windows of your LLMs and prompting one prompt to prompt if you have 2 or 3, 4 LLMs, and you get the different answers. Thank you.
And I love prompting 2 or 3 with the same question and comparing the results. It's
Exactly.
Fascinating viewpoint. Philip, a quick point and then Tedder, and we will officially stop the recording in about 5 minutes, but happy to be on as long as we want to dialogue. Philip.
Hi. Just coming back to the question about which LLMs to use. One thing which I think is absolutely essential now is to have a second screen. And that second screen is the screen where your AI lives. So it's like having a friend sat at your desk with you all the time. And it doesn't get in the way of what you're doing on the other screen. The other screen could be doing AI stuff, but you have a very specific friend sitting over here. And that really makes you, if you get stuck on anything, you just ask the friend. The point about multiple LLMs, yes, you must, because they're changing all the time. And what's the best one this week might not be the best one tomorrow. What I have found, though, is that ChatGPT generally has dropped off. That ChatGPT, I don't even bother with it now, but I use the rest. One thing which I do before I start doing a serious piece of AI research is I write down all the answers, questions I want to answer. And rather than give a complex prompt, I will simply prompt it the first bit, and then off it goes. And its opportunity to misunderstand and get it wrong, or for me to miscommunicate, is limited. And then inevitably it comes back and says, oh, do you want me to do these 4 things? Quite often the answer is yes. So you say, you copy and paste, and then off you go, do it. And it comes back with another 4 things. We say, well, I'll have 2 of those. The benefit of having written down your original questions means that when it's no longer doing anything useful in terms of prompting itself, you can go back and ask your second question. And that I find works extremely effectively for me. Yeah, on the overall issue, maybe I have the benefit of working for relatively simple organizations, but I think we got to think about AI as a tool. The objective is not to use AI. The objective is to solve business problems and business issues. So you are looking at how you use AI and how your team use AI to achieve those objectives. And so
Yes.
really, before you even start playing with the AI, you've got to do two things. First of all, you've got to, between yourselves, work out exactly what it is you're doing. Because it's the old thing of garbage in, garbage out, or let's go in vaguely around and then work out what the hell we're doing. The other side of it is, what data have we got? Because AI responds to data, it's manipulating data. So if you're not actually feeding the AI with anything meaningful, or there's nothing meaningful out there, or the data which the AI might be using is very susceptible to corruption, right? You're going to think those things through before you all pile it in and you go off on a wonderful AI assisted.
Great point. Melissa, did you have a comment?
I have just a couple quick tips. I love this, Philip. I always ask my LLM, ask me questions to clarify before you go. That's just, again, basic leadership with your team. The other thing is, at the end of kind of my context engineering or prompt engineering, I'll ask it, is there a better prompt that you'd recommend based on the outcomes that I just asked for? It always gives me the most incredible. The last thing I'll say, if you haven't already experimented with the Audible, like interacting with your LLM on your phone by voice, it is a very different experience. So I would highly recommend that as well. And it goes back to what Philip and Christian and several of you are saying. It's the whole kind of design experience feels like it's a partner. And it actually is interesting. I've been experimenting. It gives you different answers when it hears your voice. I'd be curious to get thoughts from all of you, but yeah.
Interesting. Heather, you've been very patient.
Well, I'll be short. I put in the chat a link to Hugging Face, and there are so much more AI models than we have talked about today. Out there are 2.6 million AI models. And the other day I talked to a nurse, and she was talking about the hospital, how much reading of the ECG, the heart diagnostic tool. And I will just show you here now on the chat. So then I go out there and I found this AI model, and it's trained on 10 millions recording. And there was 1.8 million patients, different patients. And they have also been external evaluate. So and I can run this AI model on my laptop for privacy reason and that sort of thing. You don't have to be on internet. And that is also in case of an emergency or a power outlet, or so for privacy and also for power outlet. This is really useful, and there is also a paper there, so you can see that it's been recognized. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all much. This has been an amazing trek of the journey, and I look forward to the ongoing dialogues. We will get what we get out to you in the next couple of days. Connect with each other. Let's follow and keep the dialogue going on LinkedIn. I love debating these topics.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care.